up the compressor very shortly and the tube. And then I also have a micro motor or a microcarver, as you call it. So I usually bounce between these, and I don't have a set way of doing things. If I'm working with a burr or a bit and it's not working, I switch. And if the tool's not working, I switch tools. And I probably will try to show you some of that today, where I'll do one particular stroke a certain way, and then maybe I'll try a different tool to get the same effect. Thank you. Okay, so the tools I just said I have is the NSK, and the micromotor, the burner, and some other abrasives that I use to get things fine-tuned and get rid of any rough fluff. Safety. Before we get too far involved, carving creates a lot of dust, burning creates a lot of smoke, and I have a lot of years ahead of me, so I'm going to keep my lungs good. So I've been getting better and better because I was really bad about protecting myself during all this. But minimally, you should have a fan to blow the smoke away. I use one of these extractors up here that I got from MDI Wood Carver, and it's loud. In fact, the draft is so big I get cold with the air going past me. I have to almost wear a sweater sometimes. And I keep flipping the filter to get any clean spot because all the dust goes to the bottom. But that really does a great job of pulling the fine dust out. I really should do more is wear safety goggles. I don't that much, but I'm really trying to make myself do it more because I see pieces flying all the time, and I'm just a step away from probably having a piece land in my eye. So I highly recommend wearing some kind of safety glasses. And also a dust begone. They're available in the back. Kathy actually told me about these a long time ago. They're washable, they're adjustable, and they're fairly comfortable, and they don't cause any fog up. And I know there's, I think, even a new improved version. I know there was 2 models of it. I got mine early on, but I just love having it. And I can wash it or just take the compressor over it, and I can still feel like I'm breathing with it. I don't know if that'll work with the microphone today, so I'm not sure if I'll use that. Okay. All right, so. Okay, so the Presto. This is a oil-free turbine carver. It goes up to about 320,000 RPM, and you do need a compressor capable of 35 PSI, and that's pretty much a compressor with a 3/4 horsepower engine, motor, whatever you want to call it. And when you're using it, and this is the handpiece here, and you can see it up there, there's actually air that blows out and helps move the dust and the pieces away. And you actually see it. You go down and you feel like you've taken a fan at it. Everything just spreads around, which is another reason to wear protection. I'm going to be hooking that up actually shortly. Maybe I can get an assist. So we're going to start with that real soon. And I'll turn this on just before I start using it. Back to the PowerPoint? Yeah. This only accepts the 1/16 inch shank burrs, and I actually have one in here still wrapped, so I'm going to get caught on my phone. There we go. Pass this around if you want to see how tiny the burrs are for this. These are actually the type of tools that the dentists use on your mouth. So next time you're at the dentist, think about those noises you hear. I kind of hear them when I do this. It's kind of scary sometimes. Really? Yes. PowerPoint? Team? PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay, now I do find it has a filter on it, and I do have to, I didn't think about it for the longest time when I first started using it, drain the water occasionally. And so it's very easy to do. And you just hook it up to your compressor. It has a very long tube, and you can put all the different bits in it. And I've got a bunch here. But a lot of the things I can do with this, I can do with the microcarver, but it runs on you, it skips on you, and I don't feel I can be as accurate. Also, what you can get with this is like a router base. So I can actually stick the device in here, and can we get a tailstock? I can then run this around and get a very consistent depth. which is why I've taped all these pieces together, because we're going to work on the center one, but I'm not going to fall off my edge. And you have to do it in small increments. So what I've created here is this board, and I have 1/16 to 1/32, 3/64, 1/16, and 5/64 depths, because you don't want to blow up the turbine on this. You have to gradually. So you set it in here, you get your depth, lock it down. Might need that screwdriver. And then you're able to very consistently draw lines or to very the same depth. And then you can go back, go to a little bit deeper, adjust your tool, and come back and go through the depth. I also, because some pieces I work on are so small or curved, I felt like this thing wasn't as handy. So my cousin, who's an engineer, designed this piece for me, and he's going to redo it, do it a better locking mechanism for me. But I found this one to be helpful. He did this on one of those. Why is this camera? There we go. On a 3D printer. Okay, back to the PowerPoint, please. Okay, so the burner, the Burn Master was one that was recommended to me by Rudy, because he says it's very powerful and that there's a hole in it you can actually override the heat and get it to be very strong. And since I do mostly carving with my burning, it's important to have a lot of power and heat. Having said that, I've never had to adjust it to the higher speed. I don't think I've gotten past the 9 without fearing for my life. Okay, the Burn Master comes with a lot of different tips that you can use, whether it's a sphere or for shading or carving. I only use a few of them. And it also accepts other tools like Colwood's or Detail Master or Razor Tip. The Microcarver is faster than a Dremel, but slower than the NSK. And it's very easy to change out tailstock. Change out by just twisting the blue ring and pulling out your bit, or putting it back in and locking it back in. So it's very easy to do a quick change. These will accept the 1/8 bits and the 3/32 bits. So there's collets that you can put in to take up for the different changes of for the different width. PowerPoint. Some of the bits and burrs you can use with the Microcarver are your the carbide ones. There's some diamond tip ones. There's the I'm having a brain dump on the name. The Cutsalls and different ones depending on what kind of texture you want to leave or how much wood you want to huck out. There's also the cup burrs I'll be demonstrating today. They do friction and they make dome-shaped. A divot with a dome in it, if you can imagine. I've seen it on some of the pieces I've done before. So we'll use them a little bit on a piece today. And this I don't have, but I really just learned about it and I wanted to share it. You may know, but I was watching some of the AEW and Andy Wolf was doing one of her leaf bowls. And she said she uses these drill saw bits to jig it in and take out and do a lot of the piercing. She says they don't travel. And when you put them in, it's like you have a saw. So MDI Woodcarver has them, so it's on my list. Okay, another tool I'll be using is a soft, needed tailstock, soft brass brush. Tailstock, please. This is not your normal brass brush. This is actually fairly soft. If you put your hand down, you're not going to puncture yourself. And I use this specifically for after I've done some texturing to clean the piece off and not worry about adding micro scratches to it. I found these on Amazon. There were 2 of them in slightly different shapes. They were very inexpensive and they look like they were made in somebody's garage, but it's the only place I could find them. I've heard that was it Rio Grande Julie Supply has them, but I couldn't guarantee it was an ultra soft one, so I took my chance with Amazon because it was easily returnable free, and I really do like using those. Okay, PowerPoint, please. So some of the abrasives I use are rifflers and some of those sanding bands, and I can pass some of them around in a little bit, and dental probes. And they come in so many different angles and shapes. When you really need to just get in there and pick something out, they can be very handy. So for our demonstration, and I'll go ahead and pass some of these around, but I had them right here. Last time when I was demonstrating, I did a demonstration on the dry brush painting, and I showed this piece that I'm passing around that has the 4 different stages of it and how we had colored them. So these are examples of the ripple pattern I'm going to demonstrate, including the ripple pattern that's on the piece for the show and tell. The other thing I'm going to demonstrate is what I call Huggins, because it's one of those entangle patterns, and I've done a few pieces there. You can see where you can really change the look of it after you get the basic shape down. And then I'll do a little bit with the cup burrs to show you how they work. So again, the ripples, I'll show you here that I'll start out and I'll trace some lines, and then I'll use the NSK with the router to get the base lines. And then I'll move on and add some slope or depth to those lines. And then we'll add slope so that they all kind of go down, and then I'll undercut. And then depending on what you want to do for the ultimate texture, you could do dimples, or you could do scrapes, or you could do a lot of different things, a chatter tool or something. It just depends on what you want to do. Then we'll do the Huggins. These are 2 examples. Another one on a finished piece. And I'll start out by showing you how I do the grid and the dots and drawing the pencil lines, and again get my depth cuts, and then work on the rounding and the undercutting. And I'll change tools several times so you can see not just one tool can do it, many tools can do it. And then with the cup burrs, I'll go ahead and show a few different of those. And the one on the right, it says Zentangle, has all these different shapes and things you can make, and they all get ridiculous names. Actually, the pattern on the left there is also a Zentangle pattern called Fission. And they have some weird names, but I've just got used to Huggins. Maybe because the arcs are like hugs and an emoticon. Don't know. So I did use the cup burrs on the far right piece, just in the center. So I'll try to do a little bit of that on the sample as well. So some of the resources, if you're interested in purchasing any equipment and getting into this, Tree Line is where I got my NSK. Wooden MDI wood carvers is where I've got my microcarver. I don't know if it's called a micro motor or microcarver. I interchange them all the time. The dust mask, dustbegone.com. And Wood Carver Supply. And one I just heard of, but I haven't looked at yet, but it sounds promising, is Brewers for Carving. Andy mentioned that in her AAW demonstration, so I quickly added that in. So before I get started and turn on the compressor, any questions from the Zoom? Okay. All right, let me get this compressor on. I think I'm going to come around the front for that. I'm going to need that to blow the dust away from me. Okay. Bear with me, I forgot to get this part set up earlier. Okay.
Okay, I usually wear this headset because I can have the magnification and really see the detail. And I should have a mask on and better eye protection. So where's my tool now? I can never see with it on. Yeah, I want to change the burr. I've got a placeholder in here because you should never leave it empty so no debris gets inside of it. And these are the burrs. We get a close-up on the tailstock. And this case is horrible. I don't recommend it because if you jiggle it, they all fall out. I had to pat it with a napkin to close it so they could get here. But I have so many times just knocked it and they've just gone everywhere. And you can imagine trying to find these. Luckily, I have a super sleuth dog that finds any little pieces of metal 2 days later. All right, so I'm going to find this small bit. I can't see them now. Some of them are so pointy that you're not able to get them in because it doesn't squeeze in. You have to press them down in, and it's just a matter of snapping it in. But if it's a very pointy one, obviously you could damage the tips. So it comes with this little tailstock, please, tip that I could either put this point into and push, but I didn't need, or I can use just the flat end if I don't have anything like my wood. I want to push it in, and then to eject it, they just turn it and switch out. So let's that back in. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get this set up. We're still in the tailstock for my 1/16 depth. Tighten it up. I'm hearing a leak. It's working. Technical difficulty. Actually, this thing used to pop off a lot, so I use a binder clip to hold it on, but this time setting it up, I didn't have it secure. The one that goes on the ring to the tool actually has a little metal ring that helps tighten it. So we should be okay now. Okay. So tailstock. Let's see the best way for you to see this. I think right here. Okay, so you can see where I've done a few to start with. And you can also see where I haven't necessarily followed my own pencil lines because it's really just a random wavy pattern. So I'm going to start off here over the edge. And I'm just going to very slowly zigzag and go off the edge. And I can go on the next one. Is that a good angle? Now, because my tiles aren't necessarily 100% square and flat, sometimes I come up and don't have the depth, but this is a good guideline to channel the next tool from floating out. So I'll do a couple more here. And I have this taped up between these other blocks so that I can keep that level surface. So there, I've done that. More likely. This way it's flat on the ground and I'm getting a consistent depth. If I didn't care about that consistency, because I'm only working with a 1/4 inch, I might have been able to do it freehand because it's not very scientific about it. Okay, so on the next piece, so here, This one had all the lines done. There you can see. And I've come along and started making depth cuts. So I'm going to change out the bit and take it out of the router. I've gone ahead and pre-done a lot of these so you don't have to watch me do 50 lines of every step. And hopefully I've progressed it enough, so I'm just going to swap that out. This one here. And now, if you can see this one, it's a little bit tapered. See that? It's hard to work backwards with that, but okay, so now I'm going to go along and follow each of these lines so that I go down. And I'm going to go at least to the depth of my tool here, because later I'm going to slope, and then later I'm going to undercut. And what I find, if I don't go deep enough and slope first, I'm repeating this cycle many times, because every time I go to change the slope, I've lost some of the edge. So you really have to take big bites out of it, because you're going to sand down and knock off a lot. And I'll show you what that means. Okay. And what I'm not doing is moving my fingers so much as my wrist, and I have my hand weighted down on the table, and I'm moving my wrist. Just like with turning, your body helps move more tool control than moving just your arms. It's the same thing here. If I use my fingers, they'd probably be a little shaky, but by using my wrist, and if I was doing different shapes, I would just turn the piece, not my hand, so that I get that muscle memory starting in, and I feel confident in my stroke. So that's that one. Can you see? If you see it from that edge, you can see how I'm getting some depth. And I listen to the motor, and if it gets too loud, I probably am pushing it too far, and I let up, because I don't want to have to spend the money to replace the turbo in here. Turbo, whatever you call it. So now that I have those in there like that, I need to go even further. And I could switch over. I'm sorry. I don't know the names of it, but this one is tapered and a spiral cut. They all have numbers, no names. So for the next step, I'm going to switch over to the micromotor. And I'm going to bring in, I think I'm going to use this tapered tailstock, tapered carbide bit, because I feel like I can really get a lot of the slope with this. It would be too much to start with, and it would probably skate. All right, so let's find a bigger, deeper burr to take this out. I think I'm going to go with this one here. Last time I got to practice with the Gainesville group before doing this. All right. Okay, back to tailstock. So now I want to make those depths even deeper, but on a slope. Would the overhead work better? Well, it's not kind of over. Switch to it. I can come. Okay, so back to this. I'm going to now take, and I'm probably going to hold it more in my hand to give it some leverage. I can use my sandbag, actually. When I first started using my carver, Kathy gave me some lessons, and she said, don't even bother with the little holder for your tool set, because you're going to be putting it down with it still running. Okay. Okay. Help with some of the dust here. Okay. So here I'm just coming in because it's got a tapered edge and following along the curve line that I've already done nonstop, moving my finger out of the way when needed. And notice that I'm turning the piece as well as my hand so I don't get into uncomfortable, awkward moves. And I might go over that 1 or 2 times, changing the depth until I feel like it's deep enough. Now I can switch to one that I've finished with that. So here now we have this one here where I've done all the depths and I'm coming around now and trying to get in there and do the undercutting. I'm going back to the NSK. How are we on time? 7:30. See, I didn't even drop in that, just snuck a few out of here. And I'm going to find one of the sharpest little tools that I have. I think this one will work. And I'm going to come along here and kind of pull it towards me at a slight angle. And this one I don't feel like doing the job, which happens to me all the time, and I think, well, I could do it better. So I'm going to go back to the NSK for that. I mean, the wrong switch. I'm going to use this bit. And I have to put the collet in because it has the smaller shank. Much better. And I'm holding it at an angle so that I can get really deep under there. And I'm turning the piece, not just my hand. And even now I've gone back and smoothed that out on some of these. They still need more undercutting. It's kind of a wash and rinse and repeat thing because each thing you do sometimes takes away from the previous step, so you have to go back and correct it. I've got it probably at 11 o'clock right now. It depends on what I'm using, and sometimes I forget that I have speed, and I'm like, why isn't this working? And it's experimenting a lot, which is the fun part, trying new things because you discover techniques you didn't think you could do. So after going along each end, and can you see? I'm trying to get the right angle here. Let me turn this off before I. Can you see how I'm getting underneath in there? So then I have this piece here, which I've done a lot of the undercutting for. So you've got your depth, you've got your slope, and then I've started doing some of the texturizing on the top. And you can do that with a lot of different things. I could do it with a burner with a ball tip, or I could do it with a small little bit. like that, and just keep hitting. Or I could switch the micro motor and use some of these slightly bigger round tips. It's just depending on the effect that you want. Or I could even use a really big one and make it more subtle. So I'm going to do that in a few different tips on this to show you the difference. So going back to NSK. Okay, and all I really do is, and the trick is to make it random and not like on one of them I went along and did lines, thought it would look cool. It needs to be very random. And it's helpful if you kind of go in a circular pattern because it keeps you from doing lines. And when you have your headset on, you can see it much closer and get better lines. Keep it on the tailstock, yeah. Hold it up like this. If you do this to music, you can get a regular beat going, and that helps your depth. And even the sound, you know how deep to go because the sound changes. And if you really concentrate, you can just go in a regular beat. And it makes a slightly different pattern if I do it instead of straight up and down, more on the side. And I can also do one where I kind of let it skid along, little tadpoles. I can show you some other textures on the Huggins pattern. This is such narrow little areas, you really can't do anything. And I can even go down to a smaller little tip to get under there so you don't see a smooth area where your tips can't get to. So I'm going to stop here on this one, pass it around. And move on to the Huggins. Not at all. This is off. That's just now. Just speak up. I've never replaced them, even though there's a couple of them, like the one going around on the thing. I bought extra thinking those would be the ones. But I guess I haven't used them enough yet.
Do you have to clean them?
I do clean them. I take and depending on the brush, a lot of times I'll just run it the bit across this brass brush, the hard brass brush, not the soft one, and that'll help clean out the carbon. If they're the diamond ones, there's a little stone you can run to help clean out the grit that gets in them. When I get to the cuppers, I'm cleaning them every few seconds because they build up so much in there that you get flat domes. And sometimes I even have to take one of the dental picks and get in there and really scrape it out of there. It's going to, if you're doing the cuppers and you don't keep them clean, it's going to look like crap. And you're going to hate it and you can't fix them because you've domed them. So we're going to do the Huggins one next.
Do you always do a sample board?
I've started to. So I can, like I did this one that I was passing around here somewhere. I think I've got it going around, that little one that looks like my show and tell piece. That was a sample board I did to start with to see how I could do the technique. And then I did it on a little candle. And then after I turned that turned piece, I said, you know what, I think I want to put the dewdrop on there because I can see it more. When it was on the bottom of a candle, it wasn't as visible. But I think anything I was going to do in the future, I would always do a sample on, just to make sure I kind of knew which bits and burrs to use, and maybe my technique could change, or I don't quite like it. And you'll see that even in these Huggins pieces that I have.
And then do you have to write down your procedure so that you repeat it?
I should.
I couldn't remember.
No, I probably should. These Huggins, I kind of look back and see got the overhead maybe? And these are a couple examples I did with the Huggins, and you can see here they've got these little dots in them. And I've done different degrees and steps on them. Where is my stack of those? Maybe I put them in here. Yeah, so they are. I used them for my mat.
Tracey, have you found any woods that do not receive that well?
I try to stay with the really fine grained maple or cherry because this was recommended to me. I'm a little bit scared of things like ash or poplar that have a bit more grain to them because it would take me developing my skills even more to deal with that. I've seen that if you long as you keep your pressure maintained, you're okay, but you happen to usually you go in the depths, and so I don't like to work with a lot of grain. So this was the sample piece that I did to figure out how to do the dew on grass before I did the other pieces. And I remember when I did the dry brush painting, this was the sample I did there, and I tried different techniques. And of course, these were the 3 ribbons. So on this here, let me just get this untaped so we can do the beginning of the Huggins. I should have offloaded this little task. Okay, so when you do the Huggins, I make a grid. Sometimes I put a frame around it, and I do the math, and I say it looks like maybe a ½ inch or so. And I go ahead and make a grid, and then I have intersections here. So I will then take the MSK with a very, very small little burr. And right at the, I gotta stay on my happy face, right at the intersections, and this is where I said I tried to listen to the sound and go the same depth. On some of my pieces, I have done them too deep, too wide, and they don't look as nice, so I'm starting to do them smaller. And truthfully, by doing all this demonstration and putting together stuff, I've learned so much just trying to prepare for teaching this than I would if I had just read a YouTube. So I have the dots, and then I'll take a pencil and go in and make my arcs. So if this one's coming out here, and this one's coming out here in a hug, then these have to come in here. And you can make the arcs any size you want or fairly straight. I don't think I do them the same every time. So I'm going to go ahead and I start at the outside of the circle and come down to the outside. I don't hit the middle of the circle because I'm really trying to carve around those circles. So now I just mixed up there. That one should be this way, and this is why I do the pencil first, so that when I start carving, I haven't messed up the pattern. So this one's on the outside, inside, so this is on the inside. So this is on the inside, outside. I'm sorry, what? I'm coming in here from the outside of the dot. And I don't have to follow these exactly when I'm carving. These are more just guidelines so that I don't put in anywhere an outie needs to go, and I think I'm already doing that. Let's see, we got in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Oop, there we go. Even with the pencil line, sometimes I've messed it up. All right, so this one's going to be on the outside. So this one's on the inside. So then that one has to come down here. And this one's going to come down here. So this one's going to come here, here, inside, inside, outside. I do talk to myself a lot. I think it's because I live alone. Something got wrong there. Just inside, inside, outside, inside. All right, I think we're good now with all our innies and outies here. So then I'll go back to I could use a burner. I could use the microcarver. I like the NSK myself, so I always start with that. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to start from anywhere and it's my whole hand in an arc. And I'll go the same direction on each one. And my eye is not really watching the tool, it's watching my destination. And I just messed that one up because I stopped the talk. My finger in the way. And then you can turn it and do each angle. Now I've got one that's already done, so I'm not going to keep doing that, which is in my pile here. You see that one? And this one's more in progress. So after I've gone through here and made my graph, done my arcs in every direction, done it properly and not had to start over, I come in here and I'll take another tool and I'll do the edges like I did before, getting a depth cut. And this is an example of using a different tool to do the same thing. And again, I'm trying to stay on top of the circles. And I'm just lightly stroking it and taking it away. And as I keep doing this, I'll get more proficient during the session and it'll be quicker. But the first few times you just gotta find your speed, find your stroke, kind of like practice shots in golf. And I always try to do them so I'm cutting into the arc, not backwards. So this one's gonna come this way. That way. And I'm basically trying to get them deep enough, which is about the same as the width of my cutter, which makes a nice guideline if it goes below the edge. And often I have to go back and clean it up because you get kind of into a routine and you get a little sloppy and then you realize you need to take a break because you were just going at it. And then I come back like, wow, I should have took a break a long time ago. And I don't like to take breaks, so it's very hard for me to stop, but sometimes my dogs insist. So I'm not going to keep doing that one because I have this next one here. And here you can see where I have not only gone along in here and gotten the edges, I now try to make them rounded. So I'll take a different tool. Or I could take the wood burner. Let me do the wood burner. I like that this has the two handles, not that you can use two at the same time, because if I want to switch tools, I don't want to wait until one cools off to do the other, and often I'll be using more than one tip anyway, and I don't want to be switching back and forth, so that's really the only advantage of having two handles. The tip I like to use the most is a skew tip, and I actually sharpen it on a honing card. You see that? And I learned this watching Donna Banfield do her thing. And just slightly on a very fine, fine one I have, I do the blue one's a little finer. Just on the edges, because I want this to slice the wood, not just to burn it. I'm just gonna. On the other side, without trying to bend it from the pressure. My hands are getting in the way. Thank you for correcting me, especially since it's being videoed. Okay, I can see that it's a little shiny on the end there. Good, my little. A lot of times I'll have a piece of scrap wood handy, and no matter what I'm doing, I start burning on it first, because you never know your temperature. Every piece of wood's different, how much coffee you've had. Okay, this one's on this side. And then the way I start out, it's 0 to 10, I'll start out in the middle and then adjust from there. And you can see that it's very red tip. It's way too hot. So if I was to do a line, it's cutting nicely. It's way too hot. So I'm going to turn it down to a 4. And it's still really red hot. I kind of like that. And I'm going to get my wire brush out, because it builds up carbon really fast, and constantly brush that off because it leaves behind crap. So on this one here, I come in here and I'm going to put some pressure because I want to slice it. And the thing about it is to keep a steady speed. And I feel like I can probably go back up on the heat now. And sometimes I tape this down here so I can just reach over and do it and not have to pick it up. I'm going to do another one here. And I'm going in at least a 1/16 of an inch. I don't know if you can see that. And again, I always try to do all the same direction. It's not a 100% smooth surface, so I'm hitting little nubs in there. Turn it around this way so you can see some of it where I do some of the other angles. The wood's actually getting quite hot. I learned early on that I shouldn't take my work in the house at night. You wake up in the morning and it sounds like your house is burnt down. Believe it or not, when I got the wood cover, oh, something I could do in the house in the evening. I was really wrong quickly about that. So you can see what I'm doing by getting in there deep. And it's questionable whether I should do this again after I start making them rounded, because I'll lose some of that. So it's often you come back and do the same thing over again. And you should be very careful with these things that are on. I remember I can tell you a safety thing. I was like this, and I reached to do something, and I burnt my arm. I probably still have a scar there. It's so easy, even, you know, you think, oh, I just need to do this. Put everything down and turn it off. Okay, so there's the other one that was done. Now, on the top of this, as you saw in some of my samples, where'd they all go here? This one I didn't burn, but what I did do is using the carver with a very nubby burr. That's not the one. And I don't need this. These go flying through the air very quickly. So what I did with this one, and I'm going to do it on, no, this one's not done, I'll do it some more on this one here, is I just holding with my pinky to keep some, you zoom out a little bit. That's good, thank you. Okay, in one direction, and I do it on all of the ones this way, which is hard to do on an angle with a wide tool, so then I would have to turn it around to get the other side. And then after I go in all that direction on those, I was going in the other direction on these. And that's just one technique. You could crosshair it so it comes out looking a little bit like, you can't probably see it from here. Where's this camera? This one? Light. And there's another one I think that had a better. Oh, I hadn't painted it yet, this one here. You could also do something where you do a line. I don't know, a lot of techniques I probably don't need to explain. You could do a lot of decoration here with little beads, lines, hashtags, geometric shapes in it. Or you could just give it texture, but you probably don't want to just smooth it out because you're always going to have some lines in there from your carving. So smoothness is not a goal. One of the things I'm trying to do better is not have such big holes here. So when I'm carving, I want to take out the hole like I did in this one. You don't see the holes anymore because I carved around them, but they're great spots because you want to make sure on this particular pattern, this is here, this is here. You want them to look like they really do interweave, I guess is a good thing. I'm a weaver, I should say the word, weave in between. And that's the Huggins pattern. So you, who was the one? I was going to do a little bit more on the depth on this one. Yeah. So on this one here, well, generally I paint everything black first. So I don't mind using the burner. If I wasn't going with a black base, I probably would think about how I would use the burner. And maybe it's you get it burned in there and you sand off the excess. So for
Another question. Okay, you said you used the wire brush to scrape off the carbon and stuff. You ever thermal shock the tip to knock off any oxidation?
I have no idea what language you're speaking. You're a scientist, aren't you?
And that would be no.
I didn't know. Thermoblast, is that what you said?
Thermal shock.
Thermoshock.
When soldering, oxidation will build up on the tip and you're soldering.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to crud up the tip. So I didn't know
Oh.
if that happened with those tips.
And I know there's more than one carver in the room. Anybody have an answer to that? A better way to clean your bits?
I clean mine off with just straight up sandpaper.
Kathy says, in case you couldn't hear that, she cleans hers with straight up sandpaper.
And then for my furs, like my sabers, my really expensive ones that I use, use the soft brass brush.
For the saber tooth burr, she'll use a soft brass brush, not the hard one.
Takes the tips off.
Do what?
Takes the
The hard one
tips.
will take the tips off. They're very aggressive.
Oh, okay. I would probably be that aggressive person. More is more. So I'm going to go back here and show you a little bit more how I'm getting the slope in these. So I'm using one of these carbides, and I'm kind of, and then rounding off where I've led a bevel. I'm taking out the bevel and rounding it off. And I do it with the grain. And it looks like I'm going back and forth, but I'm really just trying to pull towards me. Not all the tools go bi-directional. It depends on how if they're cut. If it's a cross cut, it could go bi-directional, but if it's I don't know if you want to call it a regular blade that just spirals in one direction, you can't really reverse cut. People who are left-handed like to be able to use the reverse, but it depends on the bit you're using. So again, I'm just going to come in here and with more time and patience, I would probably dig these down even deeper, because what I find is doing this changes the depth and you kind of lost some of your original work. So again, rinse and repeat. If you try to go this way, you can do it, but I just don't feel like I'm able to shape and sculpt it as much. And once I've gone through and taken out all the bevels, I can probably go back in and undercut again, just to keep everything crisp and clean, so it looks more like that. And even here, there are probably some more bevels that could come out. Another thing you could do is with sanding or files. I've been learning about Japanese nail files and different files that I don't have, and I'm thinking they would be really helpful. I could use one of the rifflers and come in here and smooth it out, because in the end I want smooth lines and not all carved up, and they come in different shapes. I have these sanding belts that I mentioned earlier, and they have a round and a pointed edge, and you can actually just keep rotating. I kind of do a little dance with it as I pull it up to get to a clean spot. And again, you could come around like that, or you could come underneath the edge and get all the ends smoothed out. But I'm thinking a file would be better, so I'm going to try them soon. So I'm going to move on to the cup burrs now. So you can see they come in sizes, with a variety of sizes. The larger ones are very difficult because it takes so much friction to get them to work, and obviously I can't make them work on a little skinny piece like this. I don't even know if this one's clean, because you can't see in it, but I'm going to go ahead and do this to start with, because I probably didn't do it when I was done with it. And then these are for the micro motor. And I need the collet. Sometimes I take a piece out and put it in here with the collet, and then I can't find the collet because the collet's down.
Collets are $15.
Yes. And my little dog found mine, but she bent it. A wash or anything you drop on the floor, in 2 days she'll have it. She'll never eat it, but she will chew on it for hours. If I'm missing something, I'll go call her out to the shop. Okay, this is going to take some high speed. I'm starting with a fairly small one. Got the fan on. And you're not going to probably see the dome on these. And a lot of times in the bigger ones, I'll go in from the edge so it doesn't drift. and then come up and try to end up straight up, because if you get them bigger, you're going to see them on an angle if you don't hold it straight up. And just do it. And you could do something in a pattern and go in a circle and get bigger, or you could have it trail off. And this is where listening to music, and it's already needs to have cleaning because it's getting black. But these really look more like holes. The biggest thing to know about these is never use your hands to change them. They're very hot. Ask me how I know. I'll get my collet back, and I'm going to go to a fairly bigger one now, which doesn't need the collet. Again, I'm going to come in on an angle, maybe 20, 30 degrees. Can we go close up?
Can't.
I don't have my remote.
I got it. It wouldn't work. I'll give you the remote.
Oh. This one's dirty. I think if you look at the close-up, so I'm going to turn it off and take a look.
Try one again.
That's probably good. Okay. It won't focus, will it?
Put your hand there. Put your hand over it. Don't focus.
Doesn't want to focus on it.
What about there?
When I get a bigger one, you'll be able to see it. These so far do have domes on them, but the bigger you get, almost every one you do, you have to clean it out each time. Where did I put the hand? So here it is. Tailstock. I'll go to the bigger one so you can see the actual. See, I almost took that with my hand.
You're over to the left, right of it.
Let's go see if this one here, not too big, not too small, if I can get it out. Now, sometimes when they're big like this and I don't want them to drift, I'm going to take two hands and brace my wrists and hold it. So maybe the camera shot tailstock now.
Yeah, but you got to move over because it's. There you go.
Trying to do this and not make the camera shot. So I'm going to push it down here. Patience. Trying not to abuse the handpiece, but build up heat. We can see now that it's a little bit of, it's not a dome. It's just easier here. But I'm getting the circle. But this piece isn't thick enough for me to get a dome. So I'd only be able to go so far. If this was a 1/2 inch piece, I would get to a dome. So I'm going to go back to a slightly smaller one. This one I can see steam coming off of it. If it doesn't melt the foam. This one might work better. Ouch. Back to the question why I practice on little pieces. And if you don't do this for a couple months on a project, you really need to warm up again. So that one's doing a better job of showing the dome. But if I look now inside here, let's see if you can see inside there. Not too bad. But I would go ahead, even with it on a little bit. I don't know if you're supposed to. Is that what you do, Kathy? It looks cleaner already. See the difference since I cleaned it? Sometimes when you get all done, you want to go back and clean them up a little bit, especially if you have them clustered together because they lose their outside diameter. So going back over them, especially with this cleaned up, will help keep them in the dome shape. This piece here is what I practiced on before I did that piece that I had brought to the symposium that was in the show. And I just practiced with different sizes and different ideas on how to get it in there. And I actually used the burner to do the lines in between. So another piece I did was this one here. And I used one of these little saber tooth. I'm terrible with names, tool names, people's names. I forget my own daughter's name sometimes. I don't know what it is. Okay, so with this one, a little support here. You can do it many ways. You can just let it hit in and make a divot. And rotate it. Or you can scoop it along and make it more random and keep them all in the same direction. Or you could do kind of what I did here with these flowers. And then I went around. Notice how they all sound the same? I'm listening because I know that's getting the same amount of cut in depth. Or you could do it and turn it to keep it very random. And this is where it's very helpful to wear a visor with a magnifier because you can get more precise in the placement. And it's often good to sit back and look at it at a distance because what you're seeing up close isn't the same as what the normal person's going to see when they're admiring your piece. And again, practicing this lets you know, do I want to kind of curve them all this way? Do I want to be very random? Do I want them close together or not close together? I'm sorry, what? I would, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I would kind of do this. But like Kathy said, you don't want to wear off the things. So if you use sandpaper.
The sabers don't normally get a lot of muck on them. Okay.
Here's a well-used one. You can just see it's, well, actually, I guess I've been using my brush too much because you can see where tailstock.
One of the Zoom said with the saber tooth, you can also burn out clogged wood with a torch.
I'm sorry.
They said with the saber tooth, you can also burn out the clogged wood with a torch.
With a torch, just burn it out. Okay, but good to know. See, I learned something doing these demos all the time. This one, yeah, has gotten messed up on this point here. Is probably worthless at this point. But I know there's opportunities to cut your bits and make them into different shapes. So I could probably make this a flat one. Kathy taught me that. And use it just down here. And it's skinnier than, say, this cylindrical one here. I could have now a skinny cylindrical one and not such a pointy one. So when I take the cup, I think this hot one, slightly bigger. Which is what I did on that one. In the center flower, I just went in with the cup burr. And put the dot in the middle. So one last thing I'll show you is I do with the NSK. And I'm just starting to do this because you know I've done my lace plates in the past. And then I got a laser engraver. I bought one from Ethan when he was getting rid of a lot of his stuff. And I thought, well, I could put my patterns for my lace with a laser onto the wood instead of using carbon paper and tracing everything on. So I did this plate, but unfortunately I didn't get it centered well. So it's my scrap piece. So I went back and I said, you know, I really want to make this have some depth to it. So I've been taking the NSK with a very, very tiny bit. And I've been going in here and can we close up the, do I have to do it from here?
Hang on, we can try.
And this is a practice piece because I wouldn't want to do it. But my whole hope is to, with the very fine tip of the NSK, take the negative space away.
There you go.
Okay. See if we can get it. Oh, we unplugged the light. You see it?
It's pretty good.
I'll pass this around, and I'm just very slow because the fine lines to show threads in between the flowers, it's taking a lot, and I almost feel like I might have to buy hand miniature chisels, which I swore I never wanted to do hand carving. I wanted to always do it with the micromotor, but I have a feeling I have some small mini tools are in my future so that I can do this. I took it out. I had a slide in there. There's a guy called Julian Feller. He's from Europe somewhere, but he's in upstate New York. He will take a piece of wood, carve it with undulations, put a lace pattern, a Belgian lace pattern, and I'm a lace maker, so I really get this, and put it on top, and hand carve out all of the flowers and the lace and the net, and then go along with a chisel on the back and take the wood away until he has a piece of lace. His stuff is in museums. He's got one that's a woman's bra. He's got sleeves, like glove sleeves that are fingerless, and then just different curtains with the undulations. And I watch him doing this, and it's just amazing how he does it. I wish he taught that. But my thing is to get my lace, which is why I started wood turning, is to make bobbins to make lace, and now I hardly make lace, but is to start doing the filigree. So I'm going to pass this around so you can see what I'm trying to get to. But I found that I watch YouTube a lot, and I'll read books, and I'll look at different things. But I find the best way to learn is just do it. And if you're doing it on a scrap, it doesn't matter if you mess up. You can turn it over. You can start over. And sometimes, as you probably all know, mistakes actually become opportunities. And you really think, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Or, oh, I didn't know that tool would work that way. Or just changing it a little bit. Like I never thought about doing the cut burrs in these little flowers. I'll pass this one too. So are there any questions?
Don't bother cleaning up the wood, you're just gonna paint it black.
What do you mean by cleaning? Oh, if I've charred it, no, I might sand it a little if it made too many oopses, but I would just then paint it all black. I would either use black gesso or gesso. I never know the difference on that word. I've said it too many times both ways that I can't remember. Kind of like produce and produce. But I also have started using some inks, acrylic inks. They're more fluid. They kind of go on more like, not like a dye, but more just, they're thin, and I think they're gonna puddle into the texture. Because I always worry about when I paint, am I gonna lose all that fine detail? So using a thinner, and I use gesso, I think I told this in the brush demo, I use gesso in that Gap 100. It's a, oh, you had your hand?
Go ahead. I was gonna say, vinegar will take that light amber burn out of it.
Okay, vinegar, if you didn't hear that, will take some of that burn charring off. Also denatured alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. I actually had a little bottle if I needed to do my denatured alcohol. And sometimes it makes a big difference. And sometimes just a light sanding will take it off. Depends on how much you've charred it. Any other questions?
Tracey also makes the bags, if anybody needs one of the sanding bags, she will make that for you. And the cost is about, what, 10 to 15?
And yours was free because you taught me. I had leftover material, and she was saying hers had holes in it, so she had to keep it in the bags that's filled with sand. And so when I was making one, I had this extra material, so I made two, and I gave one to Kathy. It stays very dirty, so I keep it in a plastic bag when I'm traveling with it. But it helps you to push your stings in and hold them. I also saw recently, and it's in my shopping list on Amazon, for anybody who bakes, there's these bowl holders. And they're like a silicone ring, so if you put a bowl in this way it stands, you can turn it and it will hold your work more for you. So those can be I haven't got one yet because they're $25. And everyone says, oh, they're so cheap. And I'm like, $25? So I haven't bought them yet. But if somebody was saying they should put sand, I have rice, and rice burns, but sand doesn't. And I saw in the AEW, Donna was using some filled with gunshot. And I guess it keeps them heavy and keeps in the position. And she had that bowl was the way I'm talking about. It was like for a baker's bowl, so you can mix and stuff. But I liked it. It was like $25. That's all I have. Any more questions?
Very good.
Thank you. If you want to come up and look at any of this while I'm packing it, feel free to. I went to Woodcraft and bought 1/4 inch, 24-inch long by 3-inch pieces of wood and cut them up on the bandsaw.